Hey y'all, so what we're going to do today is talk about finalizing your speech, and particularly the preparation outline. But first, let's just scroll up. The week before spring break, you worked on this module. It showed you how to structure main points, including the use of signposts. It showed you how to avoid plagiarism, and it showed you how to put support in your main points. Okay, so assuming you did that and you used what you learned to write the body of your speech, now after spring break, we're finalizing the speech. And so as you can see, once we've got the body, we're gonna write the introduction and the conclusion, and then we're gonna write a preparation outline. You can also see there is an explanation of how to start with your preparation outline and practice so you're ready for your speech performance using speaking notes. We'll get to that later. But what I want to focus on now is writing the preparation outline. I'm going to assume that you read and took in using signposts, citing your sources, and now we're just going to take a look at the preparation outline. Okay, so first of all, this is the page hopefully you started on. And this first section just explains that the outline we're working on now is exactly what you plan to say. It's not the speech itself. The speech is when you deliver what you have to say to an audience. What we're doing now is the outline. It's helping you get ready by planning as fully as possible what you plan to say. As I said a minute ago, we're going to go from this outline and we're going to practice and develop a set of speaking notes that you'll use during your speech. Okay, so here are the instructions that you'll need to follow. And I thought the best way to do this would be to just copy these into a Word document. And then we'll just type out what the instructions tell you to do. And then finally, we'll look at a couple example outlines so you can see what it looks like in full. All right, so here's our Word document. This is our example outline. These are the rules that we have to follow. And the first thing I want to mention is this template that I'm working in was designed for another piece of writing. So don't worry about the unusual font or the color of the font. Just do a normal black font, Calibri, Times New Roman, just one of the basic fonts. Okay, so now let's take a look at these instructions. As we already said, the outline you're writing now is a full speech. It should be written in full sentences. And an easy way to think about it is if we were in a face-to-face class and I had your outline, but you didn't show up, I could read your speech to the class and they would know the content that you'd want to get across. It wouldn't be me doing a speech. The only person doing a speech would be you having practiced and then gotten up there and talked about your speech. All right, so if it's not clear what you're supposed to do in this outline, let me know. As you learned in the Writing the Main Points module before spring break, your preparation outline should include verbal citations and a references page. Okay, so now we're to the instructions for the outline. The first instruction is that each section should start with a section header. And some of you may know you can use styles and select heading 1. I'm not going to mess with that, but it's fine. I usually do that, but we'll just keep it easy. So for this part, we're going to just do all caps. So as we know, the first section is the introduction, the second section is the body, and the third section is the conclusion. Okay, so now we have section headers. Then the next thing we need to know is each section should be outlined, and in each section the Roman numerals start over. And then the other thing that we have to do is make sure that each part of the introduction, the conclusion, and all signposts should be labeled. All right, so let's do these two instructions. So, and I'll try to not say this so much, but if you studied the section on how to write an introduction, you know there are three pieces of an introduction. The first one is an attention getter. The second one is that you reveal your topic. And the third one is you preview main points. All right. Okay, so then we know, because we studied before spring break using signposts, that there is a transition from the end of the conclusion to the first main point. In the body, we're going to start the main points over. And for our purposes right now, I'm just going to type main point 1. We know there's a transition between main points. Main point 2. And then another transition. We always have a transition between each main point. And then main point 3. And then we know that there's a transition between the end of the last main point and the conclusion. There's a transition to the conclusion. And then finally, in the conclusion, we know that there are two parts. Okay, so you see how I'm using the automatic bullet feature in Word, and it's given me Roman numeral 4. And what it's doing is counting 1, 2, 3, 4. But you remember, each section restarts. So with my version, all you have to do is click the lightning bolt, click restart numbering, and boom, you got 1. So the two parts of the conclusion are review your main points and close your speech. Okay, so now what we have, each section, the pieces that are coming in it are outlined, and we've labeled the parts of the introduction. We've labeled all the transitions. And we've labeled the parts of the conclusion. Okay, so we can get rid of these guys. Okay, then there's a couple more rules that are easier to show you on example outlines than to type. I'm not going to write a whole speech right now. But I'm sure you'll remember that in your main point, you have to verbally cite the sources that you're using for support. And verbal citations only should be should be bolded. And then finally, the sections of the outline should be single spaced. I'll show you that again in a second. And then these last three things you should have learned. Gotta fix that. You should have learned in every English composition class that you took. You should write the speech yourself. You shouldn't plagiarize. You should proofread and revise, and you should make sure that your final thing that you turn in is free from grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Okay, that's something you should have down by now if you're a traditional student who just came straight from 12th grade. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at some examples, and you'll see all of these things that we've already done, and you'll also see the verbal citations bolded, and you'll see spacing examples. All right, so let me just flip my screen to some example outlines. Okay, and these are outlines from 2 years ago, 2023. So I've changed a little bit the way I teach writing a speech. So this is not exactly what your outline should look like, but it shows you how all of the rules are put into place. Okay, so we can see this student has an introduction heading. They have a body heading. When we scroll down, we'll see they also have a conclusion heading. They have Roman numerals 1, 2, 3. In the body, the Roman numerals restart 1, and we'll see 2 in a minute. And they have labeled the parts of the introduction, the attention getter, the reveal topic sentence, the preview main point sentence. And actually, this introduction is pretty spot on. The only thing I would say is the attention getter is a little longer, but in this case it works. Okay, so now if we scroll down, you can see in the first main point there are 2 verbal citations. They're from the same source, that's fine. Ideally, there would be a verbal citation in here somewhere, but I'm guessing it's from the same WayPU. You can see that she's labeled her transitions. There's a verbal citation in the second main point. There's another verbal citation. She's labeled her transition. So you can see all the rules have been followed so far. And then the conclusion, same thing. Now the only difference is we're learning the conclusion with 2 pieces. So there would be a transition here, and then these 2 would be the 2 pieces that would be in there. So don't let that confuse you. But you can see she's labeled each part of the conclusion the way she learned it. And then finally, they've got a works cited page. Okay, so let's look at one more thing about this outline. So if you have a good eye for spacing and you're familiar with Word, this looks like it's not single spaced. It looks like the spacing is set as 1.15. And that's fine. There's no deduction for this kind of spacing. But ideally, this section, the introduction, would be single spaced. Okay, so let me show you the spacing. Let's grab this section. Let's go to the Word document, and I'll paste it in there. Didn't really paste correctly, but that's okay. Okay, so now here, let's just make it easy. We've got the introduction. And so if we highlight this and we look at paragraph, we see that it's set to line spacing multiple at 1.15. And to fix this, we just change it to single. And this is a little jacked up because of the copy and pasting, but so this is a minor thing, but as you can see, the spacing here is different than the spacing here. It's no big deal, but if you're the kind of person who likes to get everything just right, it should be single spaced. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, so here's an example of what somebody turned in, and as you can see, it doesn't follow any of the rules of a preparation outline. And so it's not a good example, but this is what you do not want to turn in. All right, let's look at one more example. Okay, so this is an example of an outline that's close but doesn't hit all of the criteria. So you can see we've got an introduction and body header. We've got Roman numerals. The Roman numerals restart. We've got labels for each piece of the introduction. If you're looking at this closely, the problem with this one is this is not how we preview or reveal our topic. And the preview of main points is only 1 sentence. So this is not an example of how to do the second and third parts of the intro, but she does have the outline right so far. If we scroll down to the body, you can see everything looks good with one exclusion, which is that there are no bolded verbal citations, which just the bolding verbal citations just makes it a little easier for me to see that you have verbal citations and to be able to evaluate them without having to search. See, here I have to search to find, all right, here's one verbal citation. According to a study titled Exertion of the Herbicide, ... That should be in bold. A systematic review, toxic effects, ... should be in bold. The World Health Organization's International Agencies for Research should be bolded. And so that's one minor problem here. If we scroll down, we can see here's main point 2. There's no transition between 1 and 2, so that's another problem. Again, there are no verbal citations bolded here, but there are verbal citations. There's not a transition because they didn't learn that, but that's okay. Here's a conclusion, and there are a couple problems with it. First, it's not labeled, and second, in their semester, they learned that there were 3 pieces of the conclusion, and in your semester, you're learning that there's 2. In either case, it's incorrect. But you can see they've got the headings, the outlining, most of the labeling, and then the other problem is they don't have a reference page. Okay, so this is the structure of the preparation outline. You saw a couple examples. That's how we write a preparation outline. As I said, the next section is how, once you've got your preparation outline done, now you're ready to start practicing to deliver your speech, and that's what the next page will talk about in detail. As usual, if you have questions, let me know in the Ask Steve, and I'll talk to you soon.